Good evening and thanks for joining us. Russian and Syrian government forces launched airstrikes today on the last rebel-held territory in Syria, the Idlib province. More than 3 million people are in the region, including fighters from groups opposed to the government. Video from a pro-opposition news agency showed smoke from what it said were bombings in multiple villages. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported more than 60 air raids in southern Idlib. And the first responder group, known as the White Helmets, reported 4 civilian deaths in the village of Abdin. Yesterday, the leaders of Russia, Syria, and Turkey failed to come up with a plan to end the fighting in Idlib. Joining us now via Skype from Beirut is Associated Press correspondent Sarah El-Deeb. Sarah, for those people who might not have been paying attention over the past few days or weeks, who are fighting over Idlib and what's at stake here?
Everyone's fighting over Idlib, to put it simply. I mean, everyone that is involved in the Syrian war find themselves on the center stage in the Idlib battle. The government is eager to retake Idlib. It is one of the last spots that is out of its control. Turkey, that is on the border with Idlib, is worried over an offensive in Idlib and is keen on not seeing one happen. And it also supports some of the opposition fighters in and around Idlib. Russia, which is a supporter of their government, Iran, which is also a government supporter, wants to sort out Idlib.
Okay, so who's actually in there? I mean, you have people who are against the Islamic State, you have people who are against the Syrian rebels, you have people who are against people who are, threatening the Turks. So, what's the population that's really being targeted here?
There's over 3 million people in Idlib, and I think the way you put it is a little bit in a bigger picture. But what's actually in Idlib is majority of people who are against the government of Syria. They've been displaced mostly from other parts of the country. They've moved from Aleppo, they've moved from Homs, they've moved from Damascus near the capital because they don't want to live under government control. There are people also who are some of the most radical fighters. They are related to Al-Qaeda. They have taken over the province or large parts of the province over the last couple of years. And so you have an estimate of 10,000 plus of hardcore radical Islamist fighters who are coincidentally are actually anti-Islamic State. They are Qaeda related, not Islamic State.
What is stalling the diplomatic approach to this? Why isn't this being solved at a table at the UN or in Geneva?
I mean, if you remember the description I just gave, it's a very complex area, and I think part of the problem is that it's also the last holding ground for the opposition in Syria. This is the last chapter, if you may, of Syria, and I think with it comes all the complications why the conflict was not resolved in the last 8 years. So you have Turkey that wants to ensure that the situation there doesn't get out of hand. There's no run on its border from the 3 million people that are going to potentially be displaced by the fighting. There is Iran and Russia who wants to ensure that there is some kind of agreement on the Turkey's presence in Syria, because Turkey already has some troops in Syria. And then you have the US, which also has some presence in eastern Syria, on the other side of the country. What was elusive for the last 8 years is now on the table in Idlib, but with a very possible humanitarian tragedy also coming with it. I think we heard the US officials yesterday describing it as 10 times or 11 times bigger than Aleppo. And so I think there's also that consideration.
Finally, does the United States have any leverage left here besides our military presence? What sort of message, that whether Nikki Haley sends it or not, what sort of message actually carries weight when it comes to all of the different parties that you just described or involved in this?
It's interesting because I think the eyes are on what Washington will decide in Syria. I think what people have seen is that it has changed its mind, it has wavered, it has been hesitant on its policy in Syria for all those years. So I think in Idlib, precisely, the US has no influence. It has very little players. It doesn't support any groups anymore, and it doesn't have any influence over what direction the politics of it will go. It also has no military presence or even near close military presence, despite all the differences and disagreement with Turkey that the US had over the past month. there is one thing that they have in common now in Idlib is they both don't want to see bloodshed there. So I think that may be one thing that the U.S. has there, is that it has a difficult and easy ally.
Associated Press correspondent Sarah El-Deeb joining us via Skype from Beirut. Thanks so much.
Thank you.